To the October 3rd, 2018 Bennington School District Board of Directors meeting. Before we kick off with the agenda, could I please have a motion to add to the committee reports a Food Services Advisory Committee report, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Jack. Approved.
Second.
Thank you, Meredith. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor of adding that agenda item, please say aye.
Aye.
So we will add that under number 6, SVSU matters. All right, so we'll open the floor to public comments, please. Anyone have any public comments? Please step right up, tell us your name and where you're from, please.
Hi, my name is Jean Connor. My comment is actually more for the principals, so do you mind if I turn? So for those of you that don't know me, I'm one of the select board members, and last year I had asked all the principals to email me if they have like amazing news about a student or your school, and I'll announce it at a select board meeting. It was to kind of give a little balance because we were giving lots of kudos to kids who play sports, which is great, but I felt like there were lots of other kids that were doing amazing things that weren't getting the attention that they deserve. So I'm not going to give you my email on public television, but I will be in touch with you, and if you have news to send me, please do. Thanks.
Thanks, Jean. Anyone else for public comments? Hearing none, moving on to our second agenda item, the consent agenda. Consent agenda was attached in the packets, and the only item we have are board minutes from September 5th and warrants for September. So could I have a motion, please, to accept the consent agenda, please, as published?
So moved.
Say Chayla, will say Jackie Prue, first and second. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in, Richard, yes?
Yeah, I've got one correction.
Okay.
A close reader on page 4. Talking about the Molly students having become skillful because of fire drills. One planned and one not planned. Neither one of them were planned.
Okay.
Okay.
Hello, Jackie Kelly. All right, so with that correction in mind, would the first and second still like to maintain their first and second of that motion?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the consent agenda with the correction of the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
Abstain, thank you, Meredith. So the consent agenda is passed. So moving on to agenda item 3, the finance. So the treasurer's report for August, has that been published yet, Renee, do you know? No, it has not yet. Okay. So Renee, would you mind stepping on the mic, please? Can you introduce Mr. Mima, is it? Ralph Mima? Lima, would you please?
So Ralph, and he can give his kind of a better background than probably than I can, but he's with Green Lantern Solar, a company based out of Vermont, who contacted us about an array that they have planned out in Pownell, and an opportunity for net metering for our schools. So with that, I will turn it over to Ralph.
Thank you very much. It's Ralph Lima. I live in Brattleboro, and I represent Green Lantern in the southern counties. I'd like to extend an invitation to the Bennington School District to sign up as a net metering customer for net metering credits from an array that we're building. We have applied for the permit, the certificate of public good hasn't come through yet, but the array would be on a capped landfill that's next to the transfer station on Maple Grove Road in Pownell. And what we're doing is the first organization we went out to with this invitation is the SVSU schools. So I'm making this presentation, I made it a little bit earlier, to Woodford Hollow, and I'll be talking to some other schools in the area as well, including Pownell Elementary. Just a quick word about Green Lantern. We're actually the largest solar developer in Vermont. We're totally Vermont born and bred, never done any projects outside the state. But between what we've built and what we have in development, we have about 40 megawatts. We're based up in Waterbury, and we've sort of kept out of the limelight, but we've done a lot of projects, including in Bennington County. We've done some projects out Route 9 near the New York border, next to the Sheriff's Department, a couple of projects, one down in Pownell near the Tannery and so forth. So we're all over the state, and we very often work with schools and hospitals and municipalities because they tend to be very good off-takers or net metering credit customers for the kinds of arrays that we develop. you all may be very well informed about how this works. I know that there's already been a lot of solar development in Bennington, and I've actually sat and talked with Dan Monks a couple of times about sites in general. This particular site in Pownell is already regarded by the Department of Environmental Conservation as a preferred site. I think we have a very, very good chance of getting a permit to put something there. And it'll be a relatively small array, 150 kilowatts, basically just sitting up on top of the cap. Can't do anything else up there. And I've crunched numbers that Renee and Jim Colkeen gave me about the electric consumption of the different elementary schools in SVSU. And the BSD schools, which I understand are Bennington Elementary, Monument, and Molly Stark, together would probably be able to use around 4/5 of the net metering credits that this particular array would generate. So I can tell you more. I'm happy to answer questions. I don't want to ramble on too much, but there's an opportunity to basically go solar and then also save a bit of money on your electric bills without having to put any money up or prepay or own or otherwise encumber the school district yourselves.
Ralph, could you please start very basic and explain what net metering is?
Sure.
Thank you.
It's a state program that's come out of the legislature and is administered by the Public Utility Commission. And it's probably the biggest program statewide in terms of how solar energy is priced and financed and fed into the grid and so forth. What net metering basically, the way it works is that you could do it yourself on your own house, but somebody develops an array, whether it's a small one or a large one, that feeds electricity into the grid, and it goes to the local utility wherever you happen to live. So here it's Green Mountain Power. Green Mountain Power doesn't pay you directly for the electricity that you've just delivered to them, but what they do is they will credit a certain value to your electric bill as a way of paying for that electricity. And the rates at which that electricity or the rates at which those credits are calculated are actually they're mandated. There's a particular it's called the blended residential rate, and then depending on the site and a few other things, that rate is adjusted up or down. So what you actually get credited for generating net metered solar is it's set in stone. It's set in mandate. It's not like a freely floating market price. And group net metering is what I'm talking about in terms of the schools and everything, because group net metering basically allows you to have one or multiple sources of electricity and one or multiple net metering credit customers all within a group. And so what this has done, I mean, all over the state and for quite a few years now, is it's created an opportunity for developers like us to find banks and investors to provide the money to build these kinds of arrays, and then invite, as I said, schools, hospitals, towns, and so forth to become net metering credit customers without having to put any money of their own down. And it may sound too good to be true, but it's actually something that is what the legislation was intended to create. What it basically boils down to is that if you're an off-taker, you basically agree to buy a certain amount of net metering credits every year at a discount. You're just basically agreeing to buy something at a discount. And what that does is it creates cash flow that can then pay off the construction of the array and pay for its operation and maintenance. So in a nutshell, a net metering credit customer, or what we call an off-taker, simply agrees to buy credits at a discount. So you might be buying $1 worth of credit for 90 cents. And that's what brings down your electric bill. Very quickly, what I calculated, based on the numbers that I got from Renee, was that, as I said before, the 3 BSD elementaries could use about 4/5 of the output of the array in Pownell. It doesn't have to be physically co-located with the elementaries. It's just within the same utility service area. And it would save the Bennington School District about $4,000 a year. That would be the benefit, besides offsetting most of your electric use with solar.
Okay.
It took me a long time to become fluent in this stuff. There's some strange quirks about the way net metering works, but it's pretty widespread now.
When would you need a decision from this board about becoming a net metering customer or off-taker?
Well, probably sooner rather than later. The application for the certificate of public good for this particular array was submitted in June, I guess. It was before July 1st. And we don't know when we're going to get the permit. It might be next week, it might be 2 or 3 months from now. But what I'm trying to do now is to line up the off-takers to sort of fully account for what the array is going to produce as much as I can ahead of time. And so, I speak to a lot of different school districts and fire districts and waste districts and so forth all the time. As a statewide company, we're always trying to sort of balance supply and demand. The sooner that I have a lineup of off-takers signed up for that array, the better. But, I think, let me say this, if the board can make a decision within weeks, great. If it's going to take months, you obviously have to take the time you need, but I can't guarantee that the capacity would be available, say in middle of November, late November, early December. I just don't know.
Okay.
I have a question for Ralph.
Sure. Let me ask one last one, please, Jackie. So let's say it took us months. It took this board months. Instead of getting the full 4/5 of that 150 kilowatt output, could we say, hey, do you have 2/5 of that left? Can we take that? Is it an all or nothing thing, or is it?
No, it's not all or nothing.
We can take what's left.
Well, the thing is, it's really hard to predict.
Okay.
I understand that boards want to fully understand what's being offered. And then the actual arrangement works through what's called a net metering agreement, which is a 15 or 20 page agreement that lawyers then have to look at and go through and so forth. So it takes time.
Okay.
If there's no longer any available capacity in Pownell, we're doing other arrays too. We recently got certificates of public good for an array, for example, in Wilmington, one on the Dover landfill. So there probably will be other capacity if Pownell's not available. It's always nice, I think, from a community standpoint, to keep the off-takers close to the source of power, because then you really feel like it's coming from local renewable source. But like I said, there will probably be other such opportunities. The other thing I would add too is that many different supervisory unions and school districts have gone through this same decision process. So in what was passed around there's some information there about other projects we've done and references. So I encourage you to reach out to folks who are in your position elsewhere, just to kind of get their sense of how the whole thing works and how cautious or rash you need to be.
All right. We'll go with Jackie Prue first, and then Jackie will come to you.
You predict that approximately, we'll say $4,000 a year. Is that after we pay? Don't we have to put money up?
No.
Because we did agree to not this board, but the board before this one, we did agree to do the net metering with another company, but that company, for some reason, it didn't happen.
Okay.
It was.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Ampersand solar?
I don't remember what it was, but it was.
Years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this would have been nice in the packet.
Yeah, and my question?
Please.
I notice you've been kind of going strong in your references up until this year. This year you've reported nothing. So it only goes to 2017.
You know something, that's actually out of date.
Oh,
Yeah, no, Renee did me a big favor by copying those, but this is actually our latest, and there's a whole bunch of 2018s that,
oh, okay, because I just kind of wondered what happened in a year.
no, we're going full speed ahead.
Right.
That's.
And for the benefit of our audience, our town is very sensitive to solar arrays. So I wanted an assurance that no solar array is being built, that we're only,
In Bennington.
in Bennington, we're only reaping the benefits of a solar array someplace else, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, if you've been to the Maple Grove Road transfer station in Belleville, and you drive in, up on your right is a capped landfill with vent pipes up on top of it. And the Department of Environmental Conservation regards those as preferred sites for solar. We've gone through the whole process, and that's where it will be built. Or landfill in Dover or Wilmington. We focused a lot on landfills, brownfields, and gravel pits.
So just to clarify, there's really no expense on our part. We would have potentially up to $4,000 or more, depending on how it shook out in the end. We wouldn't have any solar arrays on the property. We wouldn't be purchasing panels or maintaining panels. We would just strictly be using power that's being, well, getting credit for power that's being generated nearby.
Yes. You would not have to own anything. There would be no pre-payments. You would have to maintain anything. It's really a service agreement to buy a certain amount of net metering credits based on what we already know about how much electricity.
In advance?
No, you actually, what happens is that you're billed monthly based on your actual consumption
From Green Mountain.
from Green Mountain Power, and the credits appear on your electric bill. So you only pay what you use.
So, right, so from Renee's standpoint, the bill is going to appear the same with the exception of having a line item that's a credit.
Right.
I don't see a downside.
Yes, and so, based upon this information, I'd like to propose that we have an emergency meeting for the sole purpose of discussing this. And I don't know if you'd be available for questions, either by phone or in presence.
Oh, I could be available, sure.
I have a few questions. Sure. Dan, please.
So I'm trying to understand the terms.
Well, I made a proposal.
Yes.
So is that a motion?
Yes, motion.
I'll second it.
So we have a first and a second to schedule an emergency meeting, and we'll call it an additional meeting, and an additional will be a
Special meeting.
special meeting. Thank you for this month. Any discussion? Dan Monks.
Maybe we can have this discussion in that meeting. I don't want to take up time tonight, but one thing looks like at least the initial term is we're paying 90 cents for $1 worth of credits. Is that floating? Is that fixed? I just don't have enough information to see if that's something that's going to.
That's what
Are
we
we
need to
guaranteed
do.
that? Are we guaranteed that? Well, could it be more? Could it be less?
Well, we could discuss whether it should be more or less. I think 90% is pretty typical now around the state in terms of what developers can offer. The 90% is what gets fixed in the net metering agreement. What will change in the future, which we can't predict, is the blended residential rate of electricity. And the net metering credit value in terms of what are called adjusters that you, in most cases, add but can also subtract from that blended rate, is locked in for 10 years. That's what the net metering rule requires. So I would say that once that percentage, that discount percentage is negotiated, that stays fixed, but the rate of electricity will float in the future.
Okay, so that's my concern is once the adder's gone, are we still guaranteed a 10% savings?
Yes, but
Okay.
the important thing to remember is that whether the price of electricity goes up or down, you're still getting the credits at a discount.
Right. Yes.
Any other discussion about the motion on the floor? So the motion on the floor is to schedule a special meeting of the BSD in the month of October for the sole purpose of taking action on the Green Lantern solar proposition. So, proposal. So, Without any further discussion, all those in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, so the motion passes. So Laura, do you happen to know what the 17th looks like in terms of central office space and your gym's availability? And I'm picking, it's just two weeks from tonight. I don't know if that works for the board. What's that? That's MAU, right?
It's MAU.
Right.
MAU. Pownell and MAU.
Oh, and we're in Fairleigh. Some of us are up in
Oh, for
Fairleigh,
the
Vermont.
school board, yeah.
Yeah, so can you do it the 16th?
I just can't do Mondays and Thursdays.
So that's a Tuesday.
I can't do the 16th, but that's okay.
What about Thursday, the 18th?
We're still up in Fairleigh.
Okay, you guys do it up there. How about,
We could.
how about the 23rd, Tuesday, the 23rd?
I'm good.
I'm not. Let's forget it. The 25th, even though it's late in October, it's still 2 weeks before our next BSD meeting.
What day is it?
It's Thursday, the 25th?
I can't do it Thursday.
Okay. What if we did,
Especially that one.
what if we did 6 o'clock on the 17th?
I can do that. 6 o'clock on the 17th?
Yeah.
That's
No,
what
no,
it said?
we're up in Fairleigh.
You're still, yes, yes, you are. What about 6?
On the 16th,
No, Dan, can you do 6 o'clock? No.
5 o'clock, 2 o'clock?
2 o'clock I could do.
I can do during the day, any day.
I can't.
Well, how about putting it this way? Who wants to be there? We have to have 4 people.
I would like to be there.
Yeah.
So we have 4 people.
Well,
Well, those
yeah,
people would
do
like to be
days.
here, not during the day.
Can we meet early on the 7th, November 7th?
So I'll tell you what, rather than take up more of
Oh, he
of
has
this
a great
meeting time-
idea.
What's that?
Come in
Meet
early
before
on the
this meeting,
7th.
On the 7th.
Is that too
So
long?
Ralph, in terms of what you envision in terms of a timeline, if we were to come in on the 7th, so 6 weeks from today was what that amounts to.
6?
6, 4.
No,
4.
that's 6 weeks.
Is it 6?
Yep. 10th, 17th, 24th, 31st,
1, 2, 3,
7th, 5.
4. 5 weeks.
Yeah, I think it's hard to predict exactly what's going to happen, but I don't foresee a problem with the 7th.
Okay.
And it's my preference to try to get the SVSU schools connected to the nominal array before anybody else more distant
Okay.
comes in. So I will not accelerate anything else.
So simply as a matter of order for us, does that, since we would be meeting to discuss the Green Lantern proposal on the night we typically meet for November anyway, I don't believe we need a special meeting. We just need to set ahead of time the start date, and we'll put Green Lantern as the, third agenda item after public comments and consent agenda, and we'll take action right away, and we'll go from there.
Are we gonna meet early, or are we gonna meet?
Why don't we meet early? Why don't we meet at 6 o'clock, and we'll do this first up, and then we'll take care of the rest of our agenda.
Okay.
All right.
Could I just request that we have as detailed information regarding the terms, proposed terms, ahead of the meeting for
Yep.
us to review carefully?
So Ralph, would it be possible you said that there would be a service agreement for the lawyers to check out, would it be possible to get at least a draft of that prepared for us, if not the final one you'd be presenting to the board?
I can put as much information into it as I have, which is pretty extensive.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
And may I ask that any information that you get be forwarded to us, so we
Yep.
can look it over before the meeting?
Yep, I think so. So Ralph, will you forward that to Renee, please? And then Renee, will you distribute that to the group of us?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Ralph while he's here? Thank you, Ralph.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
Thank you very
time.
much.
Thank you.
So still under finance, under C, so the class of 2018 made a very generous donation to the Molly Stark students for the purpose of funding Nature's Classroom. It's $260. Very generous, very thoughtful, but I have a question for for this board. So we had, at the last budget season, we had agreed to not earmark money specifically for Nature's Classroom, rather, because it was then naming a business, a specific business that money was going to go toward. Instead, we kept it wide open about saying, hey, we're going to earmark X number of dollars for field trips.
Fifth grade.
Fifth grade field trips specifically, yes. So, question for you, Renee, is there a problem in accepting this money that the class of 2018 has specifically said is for Nature's Classroom, if that decision has not yet been made by the folks at Molly Stark?
There's actually money coming in for each of the schools. So,
Okay.
and they're in various modes of transit. Some we've already received and some are not. So $260 for each of the elementary schools
Okay,
in PSD. Because they have specified that they would like it to be used towards Nature's Classroom, we can set the money aside in a separate fund, keep it there so it doesn't roll into a fund balance. So if any point in the future a fifth grade class decides to go, the money would be
Okay,
there.
great. Thank you. That clears up my question. So could I please have a motion to accept that donation?
So
as
moved.
made? Thank you, Jack Kelly. Could I have a second? Thank you, Jayla, for all three?
For all three.
All three schools.
Okay, so Jack Kelly, is that motion to accept the donation for all three schools?
Correct.
Thank you. And Jayla, that's what you were seconding? Great. Any further discussion around that? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the donation from the class 2018, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, class of 2018. Could I also have a motion to empower the chair to write a letter of thanks to the class president of the class 2018? Thank you, Jayla. Thank you, Meredy. Any discussion about that? Hearing none, all those in favor of empowering the chair to write a thank you note, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Okay, I'll do that. All right. The technology equipment purchase. That's for the Chromebooks. Is that right, Renee? It's Frank. Hello, Mr. Barnes. How are you?
I'm well, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Yes, I'm here to ask for money, imagine that. Before I do, however, I want to please just make a note that Mr. Cutler over here, our videographer for the night, has been named one of Vermont Business Magazine's 40 this year.
Congratulations, myself. Oh, you're older than that.
You should all have a copy of this in your packet. I will read it, excuse me, for the benefit of the folks at home. Request for proposal for Chromebooks, laptop computers, charging cards, digital projectors, and associated hardware and software and licenses was prepared and sent to qualified providers on behalf of the Bennington and Mount Anthony school districts. It was an SDSU generated in behalf of those two districts. A total of 7 vendors responded. I will not read them all. The results, the 3 lowest proposals for equipment we deemed acceptable are listed in the 2 columns below. I separated this out into 2 columns because we got a significant price break on just laptops from one of the vendors. So I thought it was wise to go with that vendor for that. And the way the RFP was written, it allowed for us to accept any or all of the proposal. So in the first 2 columns, just for the laptop bid, I'm suggesting Firefly Computers of St. Paul, Minnesota, which came in at a cost of $51,810, which was $20,000 less than the next closest bid. And then for the remainder of the equipment, all of the rest of the equipment, I'm recommending we go with Zones of Auburn, Washington, for a total of $73,551. I made a note, the numbers above include only the BSD's portion of the equipment that we are earmarked here. We evaluated the bids based on price, serviceability, and function within our network. The benefits should be fairly obvious, but the equipment will replace aging laptops and projectors that have reached the end of their reliable, useful ability to function properly within our IT network. The funding source is in place. There's a funding line there. There is a lease line in the BSD budget to roll leases through every 3 years, and they're always with a buyout, a dollar buyout at the end. So there's plenty of money to cover the cost of the lease from that line. And so my recommendation is to get the laptops from Firefly Computers and all the other equipment from Zones based on them being the lowest bids. The vendors meet or exceed all components of the RFP, and strong product reputation and serviceability. So I did write a motion down there that if someone would entertain that, but if we have questions first, I'd be happy to answer.
Sure, so we'll start with questions. Yeah, Meredith, please.
Yep.
What made $20,000 difference between these three companies? That's a huge number.
The specific laptops that we asked for, no one bid on that specific laptop except this company. Everybody else bid on the exact same laptop, only with a different processor, but we didn't think that the processor made as much of a difference. And we actually sent it out again and saying, no, we really want this one, and nobody could provide that with the processor that we were looking for, and that was basically it.
So the $51,000 is actually based on your actual request?
Yes.
Versus the other two, which weren't even the actual request? Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions before we take action?
Now, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the bids.
So are you moving that we enter into a 3-year lease purchase agreement in the amount of up to $125,361 to municipal leasing consultants for 55 Dell laptop computers from Firefly Computers of St. Paul, Minneapolis, and 38 Chromebooks, 39 digital projectors, and associated hardware and licenses from Zones of Auburn, Washington?
And that's a yes.
Second. Yeah. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Barr.
Thanks very much.
Very cheap.
And then lastly, for finance, a discussion of the school resource officer. Jackie Prue, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. I want to have a discussion at board level because when I asked at one of the meetings, I think it was last spring, about the resource officer, Mr. Culkeen said that the reason why we didn't have them was because we couldn't get them from the police department. And I asked him at that time if we asked at that time if he could look into other avenues to find resource officers. And I'm not even sure if we have one at Bennington anymore, do we?
They're not officially school resource officers because there's a special way that you can qualify for that, but they do come over for 3-hour shifts on a regular basis, but we really like having them.
Well, when we first had a resource officer at Bennington Elementary, I had heard from many of the teachers at the time that they could see a considerable difference in the climate. The students were more comfortable, less disruptive, and as you know, a resource officer is the first defense in your school. They're all, throughout the country, everybody, a lot of schools are hiring resource officers. They're using the sheriff's department, and I know they have to have a special training, and I was wondering if we're working on anything to get the special training so that we can get officers in our buildings to help out where needed.
So folks can refresh my memory if this is not exactly it. As I recall, the issue around funding a school resource officer was that payment for 7 months out of the year would come out of the local budgets.
That's right.
And Bennington PD would then need to fund the rest of that position for the remainder of the year. Is that's the issue at hand. And there is also, and there's the special SRO training because it's a different skill set.
It
right?
is.
It's not just police work being in a school. It's a special skill set. Okay, I just want to make sure that
And the Bennington Police Department isn't going to be able to probably do this because they're always working short.
As I recall from the conversation, we had it in our budget for, and I don't remember how many months of the year we cover and how many BPD covers, but as I recall the conversation, it is in our budget, but the town cut it from the BPD budget, or they cut it from their budget, I'm not sure. So
Yeah.
it wasn't that we didn't have the foresight to have one in ours, but it's been cut elsewhere. So
So if we're not going to get it from the Bennington Police Department, I'm wondering if this board would consider reaching out to the, having the superintendent reach out to the sheriff's department and come up with an agreement with them where they can send somebody for the SR, whatever.
Or at least start crunching us some numbers, so maybe we can look at it and have a discussion regarding covering the balance of the school year. And if we decide that we wanted to do that,
I'd like to add something.
Please.
Well, I think we have a sincere responsibility since we promulgated that no teacher or personnel, school personnel, would be carrying weapons. And so that being said, we have the other responsibility of how will our children be protected if some incident happens. So because of that, I think we have an overwhelming responsibility to hire somebody.
Okay. I do want to add, like, there are many steps that have been taken to increase school security, and it's not just the presence of
Correct.
and armed personnel on the property.
Yeah, I know, there's cameras and there's all the things Vic went
Yeah,
through
for
and
sure.
everything, but that is not going to help us.
It's not
If there's an
visible.
active-
It's not as
Potentially not.
visible. All the rest of them are not, well, they're visible to some extent, but the
No,
presence...
I'm not disputing what's on the table. I just wanted to
Yes,
to
well-
offer that in response to what
Right,
you're
and,
saying, Jack.
but the presence of someone in the schools also, and this we know from past experiences with the so-called Officer Dare program, children, especially at a grade school, tell on people. And when they tell on people, it's usually something serious. And they might not tell the principal, they might not tell their teacher, but they know who the officer is, and they will tell that officer.
Ms. Gordon, is there any obstacle
I do.
to expending the line item to cover the SRO that we had on there? Expending that to pay for someone from the sheriff's department, for instance, who might not have that SRO training?
No, and we're actually using that to cover the details.
Okay.
That
All right.
are occurring at Bennell.
So in terms of funding a position to be in our schools in the way that we're sort of talking about now, there's no obstacle in terms of what the budget provides for right now? Thank you.
We have a set amount there that we can.
Okay.
So we'll have to look at that at budget time then, huh?
Well, I mean, it sounds like we have it for now anyway, and then if
But
we're
just
looking
at
at it
one
for next year
school.
as well.
No,
no, they
we
float.
budgeted
It's
for
a floater
Yeah.
within
Well-
BSD.
We don't
Each
need a
sheriff.
floater, we need a sheriff or a police officer at each one of our buildings, because I don't want something happening at Molly Stark and he's at Bennell or he's at Monument. Or she, whatever.
So you're proposing 3.
We should have one in each one of our buildings. If we're gonna have 3 buildings, then we need to, treat the students in each one of those buildings the same, and they should have the same security in their buildings. And I know it's a lot of money, but I don't wanna be the one that tells the parent if something happens in the school, well, we couldn't afford it.
Well, and any hesitance that I might have isn't about money, it's not about that expenditure, it's about what else might a police presence bring to a school? In terms of environmental change, in terms of student ease. I mean, certainly some students would probably feel more at ease in a school with law enforcement presence. I imagine there are students who would feel less at ease with law enforcement presence. And so
I think
again,
we have to ask our principals
yeah,
that
I think
question.
that's a huge part of this, absolutely. I think having the superintendents reach out and start to make some overtures to local law enforcement agencies to see who might be available is important.
I think if we do it right, that it could be an asset to each one of the schools. It could also be a very big asset to the students, understanding what police work is. They could have kind of a teaching role, I don't know where they do it, but, I don't imagine they can go away into the classrooms constantly. But they had a big thing about the Hoosick Falls Central School in the paper today, and where kids that didn't feel comfortable, that had bad experiences with police officers coming to their house because of their
Sure.
something that had happened, we're now connecting and understanding that they're not bad people, that, you know, these are people you have to go to and trust.
Edie, how often are they at Bennington? Is he there full-time, all day?
No, it's a 3-hour shift, depending, and it varies, and it's not daily. It's whenever they sign up for it, they come in and sign in at school. So we have about 3 or 4 different officers that come in.
Do you think it makes a difference?
Their role is not as an SRO officer, so there are some things they can't do, so it's a relationship piece.
What does
The
SRO
staff
stand
is-
for?
Excuse me?
SRO, what does that stand for?
School Resource Officer.
Thank you.
So it's really a little bit of what Jackie's alluding to is a relationship piece, because oftentimes these students do know these officers because they've been at the homes, maybe sometimes the night before. They cannot, use hands-on, that sort of thing. They are there as a presence and as a way to say we are a community. We're offering community service. We are part of this community, and we want to be part of your school. So it's really a presence right now.
So could I have a motion, please? Motion for this board to request of the superintendent to, one, reach out to local law enforcement agencies to see what staffing might be available, and to ask our superintendent to request of our building principals to put together some sort of position for their individual schools. Could I have that motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Jackie Crew. We'll call it Verity second. Any further discussion on this? Hearing none, all those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Thank you.
In addition to what we've just agreed to, I don't know how much the principals are already doing this. I know I see some things on Facebook with specifically Joel Howard. He's one of the K-9 sheriff gentlemen. Going into schools and showing dog and things like that. And I think there's a lot of free programs out there, even with the Bennington Rescue Squad and the fire department, to start getting into buildings and having some presence in the building, and not even as an SRO, but maybe even to wean an SRO in the future, so any apprehension that they may have built in from previous experiences can be calmed by having a dog they can pet, or, some firemen and things like that, some time that they can actually stop and talk to them and things. I think there's a lot of programs available.
All right. Anything else on school resource officers? Okay, so moving on to agenda item 4.
Chris,
Yes.
before we start that, with regard to agenda item number 4, I have at least a possible perceived conflict given my role as a school director and an administrator with the town of Bennington, so I'm just going to step away from the board while you guys discuss this.
So for the first item under facilities, I would ask Ms. Gordon to step to the mic and talk to us about the Orchard Road Highway property, please.
So I put together a memo that went out in your packet to give you a little background as to how we have arrived at where we are. So the property across the street is what we're referring to, previously housed the town of Bennington, one of the town of Bennington highway parking garages. We have had an informal shared relationship of that property for overflow parking, as well as our salt storage. We have confirmed that we can continue the salt shared arrangement at the new Bowen Road facility, but the overflow parking is still a question. And the town has decided that they wanted to seek proposals for use of that property. So we put together a proposal basically to continue to use the property as we have for overflow parking and salt storage. We put an offer in of $100 a year for 50 years as a lease. They do have another proposal for a purchase that I was able to discuss with the town manager today. He said they are public bids, so he was able to release that information to me. the purchase offer is $80,000 for the property. And the value of the property is over $300 on the assessor's grant list.
$300?
$300,000. So they came back to me and said, we really don't feel like we can bring your offer forward to the select board, being $100 a year for 50 years. Would you reconsider or at least offer or consider a purchase price? And that is why we are here today. I also included in your packet some testing results, reports that we have, that the property does have some contamination on it, although the levels have been decreasing, and the engineering firm does consider that that would be a trend that would continue, but they are recommending continued testing. I reached out to find out how much that might cost, and she said that there is a program, the Vermont Petroleum Cleanup Fund actually funds that testing every year. And so I said, is that funding going to remain? And she said it actually comes from taxes that we pay when we fill up our tanks at the gas station. So as long as we don't keep driving and using gas, it's likely that the funding will continue to be there. Jerry was kind enough to actually count parking spaces today. So
That was going to be my question.
we have 100 marked parking spaces, although any of you who have been here during the day certainly know that people park in areas that are not, specifically painted, particularly down in that lower lot. I worked with Human Resources today, and we have identified that we have about 84 positions attributed solely to this building. And that's actually including a couple of vacant positions that we have. There are also probably close to 10 to 12 kind of floater positions that we have that serve possibly all the BSD schools, or maybe this school and another school in the SU. So 84 positions, possibly another dozen. We have Abbey Group employees here, and then we also have the early ed staff, which is 13 staff here plus another 2 floaters. And that's not counting, any of the volunteers or parents or visitors or anybody that shows up throughout the day. So the other thing I wanted to share with you is that the town did provide us with what the utility costs were for the last year for the building. So it's a 3.25 acre parcel. There are multiple buildings, multiple structures on that. There's electric, one that's heated with propane, another with fuel oil, and the total for the last calendar year was about $8,600 for utility costs.
So
How much are the taxes?
It wouldn't be taxable property because we're not taxes.
So I have a question based upon the toxins, because that's what I looked at last night. And if the toxins are over there, what are the toxins over here? I mean, has anybody tested the soil here?
They did do testing in an adjacent property back in the mid to late 90s because it's groundwater and they're following the flow of the groundwater. They did not have any detection of vapors in the basement of the adjacent property. That was a question that I actually asked the engineer, though. Is that something that would actually, be the right thing to do of the board if you were considering purchasing the property, is to actually go out to adjoining properties and possibly test to see if there has been any...
Well, that wasn't my question. I'm wondering, what are the toxins here at Molly Stark?
I don't think it would be affecting here because the water's flowing the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Sloping away. So it's actually headed...
Right, but I still think we should have this property tested too, based upon that knowledge,
But if you really read this and really looked at the numbers, it's not an issue.
Oh, okay.
It's really not an issue anymore. Over the years, it has went way down. 2 or 3 of the wells have been closed. The only one well is 2, and that's way on the other side of the property, according to the map here, which would go down into, towards Willowbrook, I guess, or the house over there. And that was quite low from the very beginning, and it's only got to be tested one more year.
So,
And actually, it probably doesn't have to be tested one more year. I asked Dan before the meeting, and he said they just want to continue to test it.
correct. So, if that's put aside, the other two questions are, or at least from my point of view, are that we need parking, and you know the numbers of parking. And the other question, well, the question is really, has anybody approached the new buyer to ask them if they are willing to share their parking with us?
That was an approach that the town came back and offered if we would be willing to do that. And in speaking with administration, they felt that it wouldn't be a situation that would actually work out because we would be able to use the property, pretty much all of it, ourselves.
So you want us to spend $300,000 on parking?
No.
The other thing too is that the other proposer is actually going to require a zoning adjustment. It's going to have to go before the Development Review Board because of the use that they would be seeking for the property. Whereas if we were to use it, it would be fine as it is zoned now.
But if we were supposed to meet their bid, which was 300,000?
No.
No, that was
80.
excess.
80,000? Okay, so in all actuality, we, it's like spend $80,000 for parking? Plus maintenance.
So Jackie, go ahead.
I don't believe that I don't believe it's a waste of money. Number one, we don't have a real site in case of an emergency for the students in this building if we had to evacuate. That will not hold the tennis hall there will not hold the number of students that go to school here. And that used to be,
I don't think that's accurate. Are you sure of that?
yeah, I think
I thought
it-
I think they tested it last year, and I thought it did.
I thought it came back and they said that it wouldn't hold it.
Footprint-wise, I think it's as big as this building.
It doesn't?
Is that true or false? Do we know?
The tennis center,
Yeah.
you can't use that as a site.
So, you have a site across the street that you could move your students to. We're not going to be running the lights over there, we're not going to be using
The building across the street isn't larger than the tennis center by a landslide.
but you got the land.
To build?
No, that you can put, well, maybe someday we could put a gym over there for the school. But that's not going to happen. I mean, that's just a way out of the thing. But I don't think you're going to be using I don't think we were going to be spending $8,000 a year on electricity, oil, and propane. You're going to do the bare minimum because you're not going to be using the property except for parking, your salt storage, and your whatever, I don't know, your equipment. Maybe to store some extra equipment we have, or because I don't think we have enough room for storage in these buildings anyways, from what I can understand. And that's my feeling. I think we should buy it. And that's my opinion.
Meredith, go ahead, please.
I have, unfortunately, a ton of recent PFOA experience. And if nothing else, it has given me a real insight into contaminated land. And a property that has documented contaminated land, whether we're showing a trajectory of it getting better or not, is irrelevant when you look at the PFOA situation, which is, it's something that was not tested for 20, 30, 40 years ago. And now you fast forward to 2016, 2017, 2018, and we decide that we want to check for it, and we discover that it is everywhere. So now we have a major problem. That in and of itself is a huge issue. The second huge issue, and I speak only from PFOA, is that they could not determine if it was a groundwater contamination or if it was airborne. And so to assume now, with the snapshot of what we have scientifically at this moment, to assume that the groundwater is carrying it away, well, A, who's it carrying it to? And B, when do we discover that we're wrong? And it's actually not being carried away. It has settled into something. So now we're knowingly purchasing property that has documented contamination, and our job is to keep children safe. So now, at this moment in 2018, we look at this property and say, this is great because I sympathize we need parking, I sympathize we need storage, and all these other things. But the reality is that it's going to be property that BSD owns. And we may not ever be able to sell because it's contaminated property. So now we're trapped. We have a huge 3¼ acre lot that we can't get rid of because it's not actually an $80,000 property. It's actually a lot less and possibly a Superfund site.
We're talking about two different types of chemicals. PFOAs are...
All
This is
chemicals are
gasoline.
different.
This is
All
gasoline.
chemicals are different. And 20 years ago, 30 and 40 years ago, PFOA was considered a non-issue. And it was something that it wasn't being tested for. And to sit here and knowingly consider purchasing it, I think is short-sighted. And I feel like as EPA regs change in the future, which we all know they're going to, I think we could potentially be stuck with something we can't do anything with, because we can't put children there. We can't put someplace that they're going to play or house them on, because it may not be a safe situation. I personally think leasing it is fine, but to own it assumes liability.
So, Ms. Gordon, do you have a sense as to when does the town want final bids by?
Tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Jalen, you were about to say something?
What are your thoughts on what an acceptable lease bid would be?
I got no feedback from Stuart today.
It's a purchase, it's not a lease.
No, but
they're still, they would
considering the
consider
lease.
leasing, they're really not interested in holding on to the property, but a lease is not off the table. Clearly, $100 a year wasn't enough, but
Yeah, that's a
you know,
little
he
low.
said that he hopes that he would be able to do business with the BSD, so.
I just wouldn't even know where to start with a number.
Right.
Well, I personally agree with Meredy that we shouldn't purchase something that is potentially dangerous and potentially is toxic cleanup. 'Cause that's really expensive.
Just go ahead, Jerry.
Mr. Prue, how are you?
Great, and yourself?
Good, thank you. Would you mind coming up to the microphone and...
And you had two people talking to me tonight. You know, I understand everybody's concerns. I wouldn't put any kid or anybody in any danger of a place that's got chemicals that would hurt anybody or harm anybody. That property's there. It's gonna remain there, whether we do it or not, and it's across the road from us. I talked to a person that has pulled our tanks and has all the experience and stuff about chemicals and stuff like this in the ground. And he says if we wanted to, we could, I gave him the thing to read over. He says he could come and close that thing off because there's no danger of anything that is there that come up on these things. That's number one. Number two is they don't make land anymore. So what land we have. And better than that is they don't make it right across the street from us. We really, you know, I feel the really need to get that, whether it's leasing it or purchasing it. I don't think there's any liability or anything you should be afraid of for doing that. For the parking, for many reasons. First, we don't even own much of this land that we're on right here for the Bennington School District for Molly Stark School because it's tied up in that land trust for the playgrounds from years ago. So if we want to do anything, we can't even expand our parking here if we wanted to because we don't have the land to do that with. And I wouldn't request that you would try to purchase this or lease it if I thought there was any way that there was a danger to anybody. You know, I don't want anything happening on my watch. And that's the way I've run the school district program all these years, and I think I've done a pretty good job. Hope so, anyway. But I really think you really got to consider this. Like I said, land, they aren't making it anymore. They definitely aren't making it right across the street from us.
So we have, this can be a question for Mr. Proof or Ms. Gordon. We do have other places to store salt, though. Is that correct?
No. Well, yes. Thank you.
On Bowen Road.
Okay, yes. And so the salt piece is not the issue, it's the parking. Okay. Well,
So I would probably go along with the leasing because it's not a permanent deal, whereas the purchase is a permanent deal.
Right. I'll go along with leasing.
Could we potentially lease with some time to consider the other options and maybe do some more investigation in terms of
Well,
any
not
of
by
the-
tomorrow.
I know, but like, I'm wondering if we entered into a leasing agreement for a period of time, for say a year or whatever, and then that would give us time to investigate the property, and if we still aren't comfortable, then we can set another lease contract at that point.
That's a good idea. Very good.
Lease with the option to purchase.
you would like to make a motion to that effect?
Well, I think that the question is how much?
Sure, I'll let you.
I don't know where to start with that.
I think that has to come from Renee.
I feel like I wouldn't even know what is a reasonable
I think
lease
we should-
rent
Don't you think
charge.
we should let Renee negotiate that?
Yeah, I would be comfortable with Renee negotiating that, yes.
If anything, I think the lease amount should at least be able to defray the cost of the utilities, so $8,600.
So my hang up with this is that we're asking our taxpayers to pay money for something that they're not paying taxes on now.
But we have $4,000 coming in.
So,
Well,
it's not currently on the tax rolls. I mean, it won't be on the tax rolls, but it's going to be generating income for the town on the BSD taxpayers.
well, I have a problem with that too. I honestly think the town should have just preempted it. That's my opinion, but they didn't. Because you're taking from one taxpayer and you're taking it to another taxpayer. It's just, you know, it's a wash. It's a wash. So, but if we're gonna lease it, if we did it for like $5,000 a year.
Four. That's all we're getting back from the electricity.
$4,000 a year, okay, it'd take us a little bit longer, with the option to buy in 2 years.
With the option of first refusal.
Or first, yeah.
Yeah.
With the option to buy in 2 years, by then we should be able to research everything and decide one way or the other whether you want to buy it or not.
Is that a motion, Jackie Prue?
Yes.
I second it.
Thank you.
It's
Could
kind
you
of
repeat
making
that,
it
please,
without
for
the
the-
actual figures.
I make the motion that we offer $4,000 a month in lease, $4,000 a year in lease
Renee almost just killed over in her chair.
with the option to buy
2 years.
in 2 years. By that, pending our own testing and our own research.
Any further discussion? We have a first, we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those...
Oh, I have a little idea. The person who was, it might defray our costs, the person who was going to purchase this property, we might sublet the buildings for his storage.
Well,
I mean, you don't want to make enemies.
that's true.
So, I mean, it could be a,
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion on the table, on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion that Jackie Prue made to offer $4,000 a year for 2 years with an option of first refusal, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
But do we want to give Renee some negotiating power?
up to $4,000.
Well, the town now knows what we're up to willing to pay.
He didn't hear a word we said.
Look, if you want more, come back and ask us.
So we had, no, sure. Well, and it's on Cat TV anyway.
This was the thing we should have went to executive
Yeah, well,
session.
there it is. So the motion, all those opposed, no?
Did she do an up to?
Up to, can we do an up to? Can we amend to up to?
Would you,
Up to what?
up to $4,000?
They're not gonna take less now. We just said we'd do 4,000.
We showed our cards, it's over.
Okay. Could we amend it by saying we could offer whoever was going to purchase it space for the storage of their equipment?
No.
No,
Nobody wants that?
we would need to agree to purchase and then
And vote on it.
turn
Oh, I see.
and
Okay.
offer to lease it.
So, but any opposed? I didn't hear any abstentions. No, so it carries. All right, very good. And then the item B, under number 4, we're going to turn to Dan Monks, who's going to give us an update on the town sidewalk project and how it affects our schools.
Okay. Just a little history, so everybody kind of remembers. This was actually,
Well, we remember.
you remember, maybe not everybody on the board, and maybe not everybody in the audience. So, it's been a few years now that we've been trying to, we've designed and permitted and gotten some funding for a pathway between Applegate and Willowbrook that would allow folks from Applegate to get to the Molly Stark School. If anybody has ever been to those properties, there's kind of a makeshift path between the two. Certainly not anything that you'd feel comfortable sending kids along with their
Not safe.
with their backpacks, et cetera, every morning. So we did design it, we did get it permitted, we did get some funding, we being the town of Bennington. Several people actually committed to the match, this board, the town of Bennington, the hospital, let's see, the Whipstock Hill Preservation Society, and I'm missing others. There are lots of folks that actually pitched in. So we went out to bid in March of 2018. Our engineer's estimate was approximately $164,000. We received 2 bids, one for $475,000 and one for $435,000. So obviously we didn't have sufficient funding to proceed. We made the decision with our engineers to attempt to redesign the project a little bit, see if we could bring more town labor into the picture to bring that cost down to something that we could afford. And we are going to rebid that in November or December with the hopes that we'll get a more competitive price. There were several factors we think that led to this absurdly high bid price. One was the steel tariffs just went into place and people weren't sure about that. This has been perhaps, in the 20 years I've been doing this stuff, the busiest construction season we've ever had, and contractors were not hungry for work. So we're hopeful that we'll get that, perhaps not down to the engineer's estimate of about 164, but something much more reasonable that we can work with. So I would say to this board, I would hope that we would have an answer for you one way or another about proceeding by the end of December. If not, we will have to seek additional funding from the state, which would obviously delay the project even more. But that is the status of it as it is.
Thank you.
Thank you. So
Can I just have background on how long is this sidewalk?
Oh, it's not that long.
It's not $400,000 long?
It has to go over a swampy area.
The significant cost is a boardwalk across the wetlands, and it requires drilling into the wetlands for a base and the building of a boardwalk. So that's the cost. If it was just a matter of building a path, our highway crew could go in there and do it. Unfortunately, we have specialized equipment and permitting requirements for the wetlands.
And it's gonna have lights, right?
It will be lit. Yes, it
Have
will.
you contacted the Army engineers? They
We
do
have
this
not.
all the time, you know.
Well, they certainly they could do the pathway portion, but the
No,
boardwalk
they do
portion
the
might be a little
bridges.
bit different. Yeah, it's something we could look into. Sure.
So Dan, I'll put you on the agenda for January to give us an update.
Absolutely, that would be, and I would, if we get something sooner, I'll let you know.
Great, thanks. So moving on to agenda item 5, we have 2 policies to adopt. One is 7100, which is board member education. That's a new policy. It talks about, it sets some standards and talks about reimbursement for school board members for attending trainings and workshops and the like. The other policy we have to adopt is 7192, which concerns correspondence to the board. So could I get a joint motion to adopt both of those policies, please? Thank you, Chayla.
Second.
Thank you, Jackie Prue. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting both of those policies, 7100 and 7192, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, motion passes. Moving on to number 6, the SVSU. So we'll start with an SVSU update from Dan or Chayla.
Shelley, you want
It was a pretty uneventful meeting, typical business. We provided the information that we discussed the weapons statement, and that was reviewed and voted upon.
And approved?
And approved. And I think that was the big item of the meeting.
Yes.
Am I missing anything else?
No, I was just looking through the minutes, and the only other thing of note is they have proposed a policy regarding tobacco prohibition that deals with vaping.
Vaping, right. Updated it
a newer
to
thing.
the technology of
Yes.
today.
Yeah, so. Okay, thank you both. Meredith, food service, please.
Food service met September 20th, and among other things, they are looking for membership and recruitment into the food service committee, and even kids are welcome. They'd like some feedback from students. I think Maureen's and she always serves really great food, and it's warm out of the oven. So if you need cookies or pastries at the end of your day, she always has them there. Students are welcome. They need to at least be able to hang out for our 1-hour meeting. So that was really cool. She says participation is up. I'm going to give you some numbers. Now, mind you, these are SVSU-wide numbers. This isn't solely BSD. Breakfast is up. In 2017, it was 52% participation. In 2018, it's down a little bit to 50% participation, and that was strictly at the middle school, and they're trying to sort out why that's happening, and my daughter has lots of theories why that's happening. It's a whole other thing. And then they have flatlined for lunch at a really good participation rate for both 2017 and 2018 at 76%, so that's really good participation. They have some new programs they're doing with a smoothie cart and things like that, and they're working out the logistics of doing dinner at the high school, which has got so many moving parts. She's not entirely sure how she's going to pull that together. And the new biggest thing is they have an interactive menu for SVSU on svsu.org for the menu. You can click on things and see the nutrients and things like that. And our next meeting is January 17th.
Great, thank you.
May I make a comment?
Please.
Since the CDC has a cooking class, maybe some of those students would be wanting to join your group.
Yeah, maybe. For the committee? Oh,
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Dinner?
For the high school students. Join the committee for the CDC participants.
We are serving supper now. It's after school. It's like an after school snack. It's just been upgraded to a more
It's a very heavy,
nutritious.
yeah, it's a
They
heavy
did it
snack.
last year in the grade schools.
Yeah.
We did?
Yes.
I don't know if this is necessarily that committee, but the payment plan thing, now that you can transfer between children, so much better.
I pay mine electronically. I love it. It's very convenient.
So moving on to educational matters. So we have our 3 building principals here, and Dr. Abbott and Principal Colley, we're in your house, so we'll let you go first if you'd like.
Well, thank you very much for that welcome, and we're actually presenting as 3 principals together.
Great.
And we're going to have Edie. I'll begin.
Sure. So the continuing story of how we are putting literacy front and center, both at the SVSU level and at each of the BSD schools. We wanted to really update you on a lot of the professional development that's happening, which has then turned into how we are having our schools and our instruction look a little bit different. So it is our #1 goal, literacy improvement in the Ben L continuous improvement plan as it is at Molly Stark and at Monument. Student engagement as well as student performance in this area has been a concern at Bennell for at least the past 5 years. So the SVSU Needs Assessment that you've all heard about that took place in 2016-17 led us to our current situation of having the consultancy of Hill Literacy at both Molly Stark and at Bennington Elementary. So this work with Diana Malkin will be critical to our student success in reading over the next few years. So at Bennell, we are in our 3rd session this month. Our consultant is working directly each month with a team of K2 teachers, assisting them in using assessment data to determine instructional focus for each student individually. They're using data to actually help teachers learn how to focus in on that instructional focus area. So we're zooming in on the continuum of foundational skills that are critical to reading success in the later elementary grades. Each month, after meeting with the K2 teachers for a full day, the school literacy leadership team then meets from 3:30 to 5 with Diana Malkin to plan next steps. The school leadership team at each of the schools is made up of K5 teachers, as well as special educators, the literacy coach, literacy interventionists, and the principals. On alternating months, our literacy coaches, both at Molly Stark and at Bennell, who have been trained by Diana, meet with the teachers in grades 3 to 5 to replicate this same process with our upper grade teachers. Their job is to, once again, identify individual student targets for learning. The instructional focus has a continuum, and it also includes critical thinking, oral language, and vocabulary. So this is a very intense and time-consuming process at each of the schools each month, but we believe it's a critical piece of helping bridge the gap that's existed for some of our actually K-5 students. Another expected outcome of our work with our consultant is to strengthen every teacher's expertise in literacy instruction. Typically that a K2 teacher has a lot of expertise in that area, but we are needing to have that transfer to every level within the school system. Giving the percentage of students who either enter our schools without the expected level of readiness and the number of students reading well below grade level, our teachers are needing to be expert teachers of reading. So that is our focus for the next 3 to 5 years. Our consultant is guiding the progress monitoring tools, and you'll hear more about that from Kate when she reports out. The progress monitoring tools and schedule, which is key to measuring whether our interventions are working adequately. This is an essential component of our MTSS, or multi-tiered system of support. So we're really excited. That's a lot of information in just one quick blurb. You're going to hear more from our Molly Stark principals, but it is we wanted you to know how much work is happening at the building levels in terms of professional development in literacy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
So even though Monument isn't a part of the Hill Literacy Project, I actually have the opportunity to be a part of that through my role as a co-principal at Molly. So the information and the resources is not being lost and also is being shared with Monument. So I'm actually pleased, very pleased about that. I'm going to share with you a study that the Vermont Agency of Education, through the district management group, conducted in 2016 and 17. It was of 11 Vermont school districts or supervisory unions, and its focus was to improve effectiveness, availability, and equity of services provided to students who struggle both with or without individual education plans. We know of this study, and we've worked as a supervisory union to look at the results of the study. The study's opportunities were based on the 11 supervisory unions, their current practices, to best practice research, experiences of school districts that have raised the bar and reduced achievement gaps. Their findings included, in short version, ensuring elementary Tier 1 instruction, providing additional instructional time outside of core subject time, ensuring learners who struggle receive all instruction from highly skilled teachers, create a system-wide approach to supporting student behaviors, and providing students with more intensive support needs of specialized instruction from skilled and trained experts. The operational implementation is where it comes into what we're doing across the BSD. The study for the BSD included the redesign of our master schedule in all 3 schools and the creation of intervention blocks for each grade level. It's really important. Mike, Edie, and I last spring spent some time together and we looked at the findings of the DMG report. We created each a plan to work with our staff to create a schedule to match the findings, leading to the same successes that they found. We are pleased that through this redesigned schedule, we are ensuring that all students are provided universal instruction without interruption. That's 2 significant hours of English language instruction and 1 hour of math instruction. And struggling students are provided additional instruction time outside of that 2 hours and 1 hour, outside the core instruction, from highly skilled teachers during the intervention block. I will now invite Kate to share our supports and resources for building capacity with our district coaches, interventions, and student monitoring.
So this has been our second month, now we're into the second month of school, and we've rolled out our new schedule. Really our focus is looking at using our coaches and interventionists to build our building capacity to meet the needs of all of our learners. So we're working with Hill Literacy, just like Ben Elliott, and they're coming actually next week to help us with our next step in the cycle. And what we'll be doing, we have just closed our benchmark window. So we just did about 2 weeks of fast bridge and MAPS assessments in literacy and math. And what we'll be doing next week is we'll be meeting with Diana Malkin and our coaches and interventionists and determining which students need what intervention. As well as we'll be identifying students that would benefit and need enrichment and how to build that into our schedule. So we're already looking at the possibilities on both ends of our scheduling, and we have plans to ensure that, unlike previous years, our learners who are in need get an additional dose of reading. They won't be coming out of a literacy class to get different literacy. They'll have their full literacy class and then have additional instruction in literacy or math to help them close that gap if they're experiencing it. And then we'll also be, those intervention groups will be very intentional and targeted with a specific skill that each intervention group will be working on, and then we'll be progress monitoring at least twice a month to determine the level of progress for the learners. So this in part is being facilitated by Diana Malkin, who's turnkeying it with our coaches, and then our coaches are then turnkeying it because the work is really focused K-1-2 this year. Our coaches are then turnkeying it with our literacy team to grades 3, 4, and 5. And so with this model, you know, we're excited to be able to provide this additional instruction to help learners close the gap.
Great, thank you. Any questions for our principals?
I have a question.
Yes, please, Jackie.
So when they have this additional time, what are they missing?
Nothing.
They're not,
The hour is considered a content, well, let me backtrack. They are missing a small portion, but they're not missing the very focused reading instruction and the very focused math instruction. So the hour is 30 minutes of content, science and social studies, and then the other half an hour is open. So the students can be taken out within that block and flow back and forth. So if they're taken out for 30 minutes, they're still able to go back and be provided support through their classroom teacher in that area, such as maybe science or social studies. It is another time during that block that even our classroom teachers can focus on a skill for particular students that they may think need some more support. So sometimes these students can receive 3 or even 4 opportunities for additional instruction focused.
So they do get science and social studies?
Most of them do, but if there is the focus that they really need, or if it is a learner that is severely behind, you have to balance. What is it that is most important for that learner? Do they need to have more than one opportunity to be provided highly skilled instruction so that we can close the gap for them and their ability to read, and then certainly be a part of the regular programming, which might include science and social studies. There's only so much time during the day.
Well, I understand that.
Yeah.
So, I guess I would always want to know why, why couldn't the students be instructed in reading skills within the science and social studies? In other words, if we have books in science and social studies that are so-called readers types of programs, wouldn't that be more beneficial?
What we've learned is these children need very focused intervention on very specific skills. So you're really looking at the phonological, the foundational skills of reading, and that's not what we're doing through science and social studies. So we're trying to teach children to read. Yes, we have content that we can certainly share with children in regards to science and social studies, but when children have a very large gap and they're behind their peers, we have to really be able to provide them with very skilled, focused area of instruction outside of the classroom, not during the content time and not during their core instruction time. And we know by the DMG that the findings that we have found, those areas of opportunity, they have had successes. And that's why we're looking at this information through 11 school districts and 11 supervisory unions and how they did succeed. And this is really the base and the model. And we're looking to try and support that, replicate it, and provide that for our students here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Not just chill.
So for a child that potentially has enrichment opportunities, where is that time brought in?
So, I've
Remember?
7 or 8 blocks, 30-minute blocks.
Yeah.
So we found 7 or 8 30-minute blocks in the day that we're looking at building in those intervention opportunities. So those blocks we would like to see that same intervention block be used for the enrichment time. So across different grades, they have different intervention blocks. And that we would be targeting the learners that don't need that additional intervention to have them get an opportunity to have a bit of a boost and engage in some learning that they find very exciting and enriching.
Part of what Diana is working with teachers is to develop templates for whole group and small group instruction. So the whole group is that tier 1, but when we break into smaller groups, that's where the enrichment pieces can really be addressed. And the assessment data will show us who fits into those blocks.
And our curriculum and our programming that we use also gives us an opportunity to differentiate for students. So we're not just providing instruction for students in one path, or I'll say, an avenue. If students are excelling, we have the ability to differentiate and go both ways with children. So during the 2 hours of ELA instruction, for example, and math, we're doing tiered interventions. So we have whole group instruction. We have another opportunity for a tiered focus at the second level. And then our intervention block is using a tier 3 and specialized instruction during that. So we do have an opportunity now with the creation of these master schedules to be able to provide students with at least 3 to 4 focused opportunities of instruction. So it's really been transforming. It really has. And we're really looking at working together, I've used the term all hands on deck. But the enriching part is equally as important as those children who have a very large gap and need to close the gap.
That's the reason I brought it up. I just want to make sure that, those children aren't necessarily
Thank you.
being,
How are the students taking this? I mean, because it is different. I mean, especially if they have to do, they need the extra help. They're missing something. And, how are they handling it?
Well, I would say I don't think I really see a presentation that's different in our children. Our learners understand that they're here, and they're the ones that actually probably are the least affected by, I think, our difference in how we've managed or how we've restructured our instruction. If anything, we're very excited about the learners being excited about their own gains and their own growth, because learners do know that. They know where they are as a learner. They're very aware of it. So previous to this, if you were a learner, you're in your core classroom, you may have been leaving out of that core instruction to work with another teacher, and now you're not. So you're a part of your regular classroom community for that tiered instruction, and you no longer have to leave. Now, that one intervention, pardon?
You're not being singled out anymore.
Correct.
Also, you've raised the standard, so, and it's my firm belief that the higher you raise it, they'll try until they reach.
Anything else for our principals? Great, thank you very much. Thanks so much. Turn it over to you.
It's me.
Yes.
So I was asked to give an update about the Seedlings program. I reached out to my friend Jean Jenkins and Carrie Snyder's here as well to represent Seedlings. So we're going to do this together as a team. I want to give you a little history piece, and I'm going to depend on Jeannie for the history piece. Could you do the history of Seedlings?
Sure. So the Seedlings program began in 2014. It came out of the Poverty Working Group, which were part of community conversations. And it is now in its 5th year. The program is an after-school program that kids generally enter in 1st grade and stay in the program through their transition to middle school. It is designed to help children improve and increase their academic skill and social skills. We do a lot of connecting with the community so that kids understand who they are in the community and what assets there are for them to be part of in the community. We started with 6 kids in the first grade group. 3 of them are in 5th grade this year. The other 3 moved out of the area. And we are now up to 29 kids this year. So it's pretty nice growth. I want to say the kids care about, the program has healthy snack, then kids have 30 minutes of tutoring and 30 minutes of creative play, and they trade off. So half go to individualized tutoring, half stay and play with the volunteers. We have about 30 volunteers each year. I will, to your point, Donna, the kids love tutoring, which is, you might think is surprising, but they know where they are academically. They want to be excellent academically, and so they really value it. And that has been something that we've discussed. I don't know if you want me to talk about that.
So we'll bounce off each other. So what, Jeannie reached out this summer, and we started meeting, Renee, myself, Mr. Culkeen, and a group of part of the board, Katrina Hastings, is she the director? Is her title?
She's the program manager.
She's the program manager in the tutorial center, and we've met 3 times since mid-August. About every 2.5 weeks we come together. Our conversations have been around the tutoring aspect and how we can support that piece. So in the Title I grant, there is a strategy under Title I where we can provide funding for tutoring for eligible students, which we identify through our universal screening, which has just happened. And we already know the students that are part of Seedlings that need tutoring. Bennington and Molly Stark are a piece of that amount of funding to access tutoring, and there's a process. So what we did initially is we raised a lot of good questions about what are the boundaries. Renee and I spent a lot of time reaching out to our contacts at the Agency of Education for clarity. So we know that the tutors, when we access the money through title funding, need to be Vermont certified teachers. They need to be using an evidence-based program, which we would say the Wilson system within the evidence-based program that we have listed in the grant is the Wilson system, and we need to be monitoring progress. So, as part of this was, when this came, so how do we create a bank of tutors? And so what we were hearing from Kim Tenner at Molly Stark, who helps to manage the program here, and Jerry O'Connor at Bennell, we need to find more tutors. So we came up with a SVSU survey, which we've never done before, and we sent it out to every SVSU educator and said, hey, who'd be interested in tutoring? And we really thought out of the box, and we asked them, what area would you be interested in providing tutoring, and what buildings would you be willing to provide the service? So we now have a bank of 44, which we couldn't have anticipated. We have a spreadsheet with 44 teachers from around the district that are willing to share their expertise, which has now created a bank to pull from as part of this plan. And so Kim and Jerry right now are working with the literacy coaches in each building, so everything is clean and connected. Because when you work with kids, especially kids that need tutoring, we want it to make sense for them. We want their tutoring to mirror what the instruction looks like during the day. So our coaches are supporting Kim and Jerry in putting this together. We know that, and this was exciting, that there are students involved in Seedlings that do not require tutoring, but would benefit from homework support. I think there's just a couple in each building at my last check-in. Yes.
Yeah, so almost all of our children started first grade at least 2 grades below academically. And so, so we have a couple kids in each building now who have achieved grade level, which makes them ineligible for Title I tutoring, which is sort of too bad, because if you think about the circumstances that might allow a child to start school with academic deficits, you want to continue support. You may also have other children.
Yes.
I mean, I think everything we've been doing, what I really like is that everything we're doing here not only serves Seedlings children, but it serves children in general. It's the same questions and issues. And so there may be other reasons why a child might not be eligible for Title I tutoring, but would definitely benefit from individualized tutoring.
So we've been talking about what do we do when we have some kids that don't necessarily qualify for this line item in the title grant, but we still want to make sure that they have this, and it might look more like someone helped them do their homework during the seedling time. Currently, in speaking to Kim Tenner and Jerry this week, they feel like they have a plan to support that, but we have been in, the tutorial center has been a great part of our conversation, and have said at every meeting that we've had, and we're still trying to determine what role, and this is something to be aware of as a board, what would it look like during budgeting season if there was some kind of earmark for certain students that don't meet the criteria for tutoring the grant, but still that our schools can access to provide support. And Seedlings would be a great example of a resource that could benefit from that. So currently, that's who's been involved in the conversation. And you guys are about to start to be up and running.
So we had open houses this week at both Bennell and Molly Stark for returning students and some of our new first graders and volunteers. So we start programming next Tuesday. Yeah.
It's been a great community conversation.
It's actually been a great community conversation, and I do really want to applaud Laura you and Renee and Jim Culkeen for the time and the openness and the willingness to collaborate, because I do feel like Title I is something that's really a useful tool for us, and we want to make sure that the community at large is involved and people understand how it can be used well. So,
Are you ready for questions?
Yeah, sure.
I have 2 questions.
Sure.
Well, actually, one statement and one question.
Yeah.
Have you thought of peer tutoring for the kids who aren't
Are we talking
eligible?
specifically to Sealings or just in general?
Well, for the children who have come out of the program, couldn't they be peer tutors?
Could there be peer tutors for them? Could we
well,
access
I mean,
peer
the
tutoring?
children are still in the program. If you achieve academic grade level, you get to stay in Sealings. I don't know. We haven't considered that. I think, I don't know. I mean, think about that. I mean,
children learn a lot from each other.
They do, and they learn a lot from each other socially, and they do get to spend time socially. I mean, you know, you're spending time playing checkers or mancala or chess, or, you know, there are lots of ways to learn, and you're building academic skills as well as social skills. I think that I like the idea of having an adult that has expertise working with a child. Because, you know, if you've built 2 years of, if you've closed that gap, you know, I want you to be able to continue to grow academically.
Right. So the question that I have is, who monitors the tutors? So for instance, if, like, let's say you have 5 tutors for this building, and one of them is out sick that day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is, so the 3 things we talked about were recruitment of Title I tutors, management of the program, and what to do when students are not eligible but would benefit. And so the management piece, in part, is being handled right now by the literacy coaches. Yes.
With the assistant, so it's the assistant principals in each of those buildings with the coaches.
Yeah. And so
have been asked to try to manage that. Yes.
Last year, the assistant principals got stuck with trying to do all that management, and it really was very difficult because they're not in the classroom. If a tutor doesn't show up, they don't necessarily know it, and so that was a pretty significant part of our conversations and part of the reason the tutorial center was there. Up until last year, the tutorial center served that management function and did it well. So it's not something that Seedlings can't speak to a teacher if, you know, if they're not there. We don't have any way of knowing it until the last minute. And on the other side, it's really not the role of an assistant principal to be chasing down tutors.
So that's being handled now in a different way.
There's a plan right now in this moment that's in place, and I think based on we need to monitor and see how this goes and know that we have the tutorial center that's very willing to figure out to see how they can help us with this. So I'm trying to honor what the school wants to try right now. The 2 schools would like to try this manner right now, but knowing that we have options on the table.
Do you have like a substitute roster, or?
I actually can't. Kim and Jerry are here, so I can't answer.
Just a thought on your seedling graduates. Something that I know is an option in every school, we have after-school program, and there's after-school funding, and you have a bank of 44 qualified people within that bank. Why not offer after-school programs at every school? And it's only by one of the 44. The position is only offered to one of the 44, or however many you feel you need.
Yeah.
It's a paid position. It's not title funded. They're qualified, and if you've closed a 2-year gap and you don't want to lose it, but you title the after-school program Seedling Graduates, they're aspiring to get to that program. And then you don't lose any funding. It's a different revenue source entirely. You still have a qualified individual doing it, and you can still tap into that same population, and or maybe grab some other kids who are looking for ancillary benefits that they're not getting enough of in the classroom, they could jump in on a seedling graduate program to get some added work.
That's really, that's interesting.
It's money that's already there, and it's, if they've got the interest, why not continue that ball moving in that way?
Great idea.
And then in some, busing is being offered and things like that now, so there isn't a lot of excuses why we wouldn't be able to pay the person and get the child home.
One other question, if I may. Last year, there was a question brought up, actually, was it the first meeting of this year or the last meeting of last year, about leftover not seedlings money, but leftover title funds. How's that being handled?
The rollover?
Yes.
Renee. She has a nice,
We have 27 months to spend the money that we're awarded annually, and that money will roll over into the new pots where we're allocated new money, and the old money that was unused is available as well. And then as we progress through the year, we actually, I remember we were talking about this in our meeting, they actually do track this. We spend the oldest money first, so we're never losing out on it.
and so, but the other thing to remember is that so that's that money piece of it. When we want to use the money, we have to write a strategy that is submitted to the Agency of Education for approval. And then we wait. And then they might ask us for more information, they might ask us to make suggestions. So every time we want to access that, there's a process that we go through.
Thank you.
I like Meredith's idea, but we don't put a lot of money into after-school programs, do we?
I think we do.
We're getting money.
Not
At least
everybody
in the
pays for it.
BSD, there's quite a bit.
And it's
Oh, we do?
supplemented.
Okay. I wasn't sure. I didn't think we had.
Yeah, but even still, the person working is making more money.
Any other questions about seedlings? Great. Laura, is there more? Great. Thank you very much. Thanks for that.
Thanks, Chief.
So moving on to agenda item number 9, Chair's Report. I want to just chat a bit about Act 46, but just in response to a comment that was made at the beginning. Now that we have a public relations person, maybe this board could request through the superintendent that Derek Carson be notifying the select board of good things when good things happen. Sort of take it off the plate of our building principals and give it to the person who has that job. And I'd like to do that. So,
Is that a motion?
sure. Could I have a motion to ask the superintendent to direct Derek Carson to be speaking to the select board?
So moved.
Thank you, Jack Kelly. Could I have a second, please?
And reaching out to the principals to solicit that information.
Yes. All of that. Yes.
Then second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Great, motion passes. We'll ask Jim to do that. All right, so just a bit about Act 46. So last month, there was a meeting with the state, with representatives of the State Board of Ed. At our last BSD meeting, you had empowered me to write a letter to discuss the representational model, because the representational model outlined in the draft articles of agreement from the State Board of Ed doesn't really fit what we have. So I just wanted to read into the record the letter that was sent. And Richard, I will email you a copy of this so you don't have to get it all down. So it was addressed to Ms. Krista Hewling, who's the chair of the State Board of Ed. Dear Ms. Hewling, on September 5th, 2018, the Bennington School District, BSD, Board of Directors empowered me as its chair to address this letter to the State Board of Education. I am writing regarding the hybrid representational model outlined in Article 10 of the draft Articles of Agreement for districts merged under Act 46. The merger that will encompass the town of Bennington will include the following school districts: Bennington School District with an enrollment of 783, Pownell School District, enrollment 217, Shaftesbury School District, enrollment 214, and Woodford School District, enrollment 23. The representation model in Article 10 states that each of these current districts will be allotted 2 seats on the new UUSD board. Such an allocation does not adequately address the huge discrepancies in the population of each of the towns, nor the number of students each town will have in the UUSD. This gives the smaller current districts an overwhelmingly disproportionate influence in future decisions about how educational services are shaped, rendered, and funded. The BSD respectfully recommends that the following hybrid representational model be adopted by the State Board of Education when forming a UUSD of the above named districts. Bennington with four representatives, Pownell with 2, Shaftesbury with 2, and Woodford with 1. Such a representation model protects the voice of smaller current districts while still recognizing that the BSD is larger than the other 3 districts combined. Please note that this hybrid representation model was part of the Articles of Agreement approved by the voters of Bennington and Shaftesbury on November 7, 2017, and was later forwarded to the Secretary of Education as part of the Act 46, Section 9 reports filed by the boards of directors for the Bennington, Shaftesbury, and Woodford school districts. The BSD believes that this change in representation is fair and supportive of the goals and vision under Act 46. Thank you for your time in considering this request. Sincerely, Christopher Brian Murphy. So that letter was sent up along with a letter from Steve Stitzel that cited appropriate statutes, that cited some precedent in terms of representation models. Superintendent Culkeen presented this letter along with Steve Stitzel's letter, along with some brief testimony asking the State Board of Ed to adopt this model. The State Board of Ed gave very little feedback, and we're awaiting the November 30th final report from them. So that's the Act 46 updates. Moving on to the last agenda item, which is just FYI. Included in the board was an SVSU student enrollment numbers for September, the budget status report for October, and the Vermont Arts Council Award to Molly Stark, which noted that Molly Stark was given a grant in the amount of $1,250 to support a 5-day puppet making and performance residency with No Strings Marionettes, which I think began today. So that's
It was nice in the,
was in the
article in the paper.
So
I want to see the puppets.
Yeah, I think it began yesterday because it was in the newspaper today.
That's a really great company. They did a great job.
there we have it. Could I please have a motion to adjourn?
Before we do that, I just wanted to, from your chair's report from the Act 46
Yes.
report out.
Sorry, I should
And
remember, yes.
it's okay. And Dan, keep me honest here. Jim talked about, or Superintendent Culkeen talked about at the SVSU meeting that from his perspective, it did not look like that the Board of Education was necessarily going to budge on the 222 and 220. So just bring that up.
Yeah, and I think part of that feedback was, well, in a year's time, you can decide amongst yourselves and amongst your voters how you want the representational model to look. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. So thank you for that. So could I have that motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Jack Kelly. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Meredith. I think. Any discussion about adjournment? Hearing none. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.